Randolph would shoot me? No, he's too much of a gentleman, despite all you say about him. But that don't hold for everybody from Texas. When there's trouble, they stick together like they all had the same last name. Not that he needs any help, Frank said, gazing at George. I hear tell he has 6 more brothers, each one meaner than the next. I don't care if he's got 106, Fern declared. Hen Randolph will hang. You have my word on it. The Kansas Pacific engine belched thick clouds of black smoke into the pristine Kansas sky as it slowed in its approach to Abilene. Inside the only passenger car, James Madison Randolph sat erect in his seat. Don't be fooled by its rough appearance, said the only other passenger, a talkative man with whom Madison had been trying to avoid conversation since Kansas City. Charlie Thompson only laid out our little town about a dozen years ago, but already it's one of the most important in the state. Someday it'll be the most important city in Kansas. The man had introduced himself as Sam Belton, the owner of the largest land office in Abilene. Madison tried to ignore him, as well as the nearly overpowering noise and stench emanating from the stockyards that bordered the train tracks on the south, but failed on both counts. Of course, a lot of people are only interested in making as much money as they can while the cattle boom lasts, Belton continued. But we got a lot of good, solid citizens here who hate the cattle trade as much as I do. One day there's going to be farms as far as you can see. Madison didn't have to study the countryside to know that farming would be a very chancy occupation. One glance had been sufficient to tell him it was as barren as anything he had seen in Texas. But Madison had no thoughts to spare for Kansas or its future farmers. George would be waiting at the station, and with him questions that had gone unanswered for 8 years. From the moment he stepped on the train in Boston, Madison had been dreading this meeting. Madison reluctantly rose to his feet as the train came to a halt. He looked at his clothes and frowned. Travel had ruined his appearance. That and the heat. Kansas was nothing like Boston or Virginia, but it was depressingly like Texas. His 3 years in that state had been a nightmare he preferred to remember as seldom as possible, preferably not at all. Don't think about it. Just do it. Then your debt will be paid and you can get back to your own life. You want to put up at the Gulf House, Belton told Madison. It's not the most popular hotel, but the drover's cottage is full of Texans. We don't mind taking their money, but nobody wants to sleep with them. The look Madison gave Belton caused him to leave the train without further comment. Madison didn't know what he expected of Abilene, but he had thought there'd be a railroad station at the very least. Instead, he stepped out onto a bare piece of prairie as big as a military parade ground that separated the tracks from the buildings of the town. His luggage landed at his feet. The heat soaked up by his black suit made him feel 20 degrees hotter. He picked up his bags and headed toward the first building he saw. The words Drover's Cottage were printed in huge letters across the front of the 3-story hotel. It offered shade, rooms, and, Madison hoped despite Belton's remarks, some modicum of comfort. Fern felt her stomach do a double flip. The most gorgeous man she'd ever imagined had just stepped off the train. Sinking down on the open windowsill, she gaped at him, her mouth as wide open as her eyes. She'd never seen anything like him. He didn't even dress like an ordinary person. His clothes would have caused him to stand out in any gathering. In Abilene, they were sure to make him an attraction all by himself. She was used to rough men, dirty from their work, coarse because of the way they lived, strong because they had to be. They were clean only when they came fresh from the bath. Then they moved about as though uncomfortable with their unaccustomed state. There was nothing uncertain about this man. He looked strong and determined, like a young bull surveying a new territory he meant to make his own. He also looked polished and slicked down. His coat fitted his broad shoulders as tightly as her gloves fitted her hands. As he stood there, gazing disdainfully around him, the remaining strength drained from her.